Good morning. It is Friday. We've got a lot going on. I actually just came in the shop or the office here to do this devotion. I'm gonna get the chats opened up so we can communicate. And let me get this on so I can see what you say. Okay. So, it is Friday morning, October 9th. There is a lot of things that are going on here at the church, even though it's a Friday. So, I don't think that you'll be able to hear it, hopefully, but in the back parking lot area or the playground area where the lot we have behind it, we'd had a bunch of mulch dropped off, so that all is getting laid out today. It is getting, you know, dispersed, I guess is the right word there. So that's happening. And anyway, I'm going to turn this off because it keeps going off this morning. But that's happening right now. And so we're getting that done. And then I don't know. I don't believe that we have any events this weekend. We had a lot last weekend. There was a lot going on this weekend. Calming down just a little bit. But yet again, just getting ready for a beautiful day on Sunday. Hopefully the weather plays nice and we can be outside and everything will just go well. We have the tent extended for one more week. If you have not seen or heard, but we extended the tent one more week and keep that until the 18th. So we're going to have service out there during that service on the 11 o'clock, but also being able to do a community event that afternoon from 5 to 7 on Sunday. We will give out pumpkins to kids, and there'll be some games for the kids that are free. We also will be joined by Edwards Drive-In Food Truck, so you can come, order some food, and enjoy fellowship with other people. We'll have tables and chairs set up underneath the tent, and so that way we can enjoy that time together. My coffee and so I don't know if I've mentioned this to you guys. Obviously I love coffee, but I got this Tervis mug. I'm not sponsored by Tervis, so Tervis, if you happen to hear this and you want to sponsor me, that's okay. But anyway, I ordered a mug to just showcase our youth group. I've had this thing for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years now, and maybe even longer. And I love it. The only problem that I have with it is it keeps the coffee at a molten lava level for many hours. So congrats, Tervis, for creating something that can keep something so hot so long. But it's hard to drink sometimes. So, I mean, I poured this before I left home, and it's hot. So I gotta be careful with that. I don't want to burn my taste buds. I might be eating something delectable like pizza or something today. So anyway, let me check and see who said hi so far. So we have going on. Okay, so Nancy Gilbert, good morning to you, Nancy. How are you doing this morning? Glad to have you here. Judy Marsh, good morning to you. I'm so glad to, again, have you also. Diane Thomas, nice for you to join us. Good morning to you. Renee, good morning. She's saying good morning to everybody. Good morning, Villa family. Kathy Wood, good morning to you also. So excited to have everybody here. I know we'll have some more jump in, and when they do, I will share their hellos or their conversations. So, the devotion today, and I'm gonna get the verse in just a moment for you guys. Here's my question for you. What sparks worship for you? Like, what sparks worship? Like, what makes you think, like, when something happens, I don't know what it is, whether you see something, you hear something, you do something. What is it that when something happens, you just go, you know what, God, thank you. I love you. I'm appreciative of you. just that worship to God. For me, a lot of it is the weather. Not the weather as in like if it's good or bad, but just being outside, the outdoors. Just I look into the sky, I can look into the trees changing and growth and things of this nature. Um, when you're working with wood there, being a woodworker, I get to see things, and even this morning, maybe a little bit, I was working on that project that I'm doing, and as you see things starting to take shape. I know I talked about it, I think yesterday, but it takes time. And to see that happening and to see that working, and then you see maybe something slides out of joint just a little bit or right where it's supposed to be, um, and I see that, and then I can just come and I can, use some sandpaper or use a chisel or do something to get that, or a tool to knock that off and put that right back where it's supposed to be, right? And so sometimes I see that and I just see God. I just say, thank you, God, for doing that to me. Thank you for putting me together. Thank you for putting me through the paces. Thank you for doing that. And then when I get out of line a little bit or something doesn't work quite right, thank you for adjusting that. I said, when I see outdoors, and I see new growth all the time, especially in areas it's like, man, it just seems like grass is always dying there. We got some spots around the church, obviously, but then you just see something sprout like in the middle, and you're like, hey, maybe this time it'll grow. And I think, thanks God for continually giving opportunities for growth, continue opportunities for those types of things. When you see persistent weeds, right? I'm always reminded of God and what He tells us, that we need to prune our lives sometimes, because if those weeds get out of control early on, right? They're pretty easy to take care of. You can even just sometimes pull them out of the ground. But then if you let those weeds grow and you let them, continue to sit there and manifest, and you don't do anything with them, and a lot like sin, then it becomes harder and harder to get rid of them. And sometimes you have to do, major intensive work to get rid of a weed. I recently had to get rid of a weed tree, and I say it in a weird sense, like it wasn't a basic tree. I didn't just go down and cut trees. I don't do that. But there, this weed thing that appeared to be a tree had been growing in my area, and I just kept putting it off. Like, I'll deal with that in a little bit. I'll take care of that in a little while, and I never did. And even that James Moore just jumped on YouTube, and he'd tell you that every time he saw it, he'd be like, "Hey, you should probably take care of that." And I'm like, "Yeah, no, I'm gonna get to it." And then what happens is that over time it gets bigger, and I had to actually have somebody come in with like a, um, a a stump grinder and like grind it up to get it out and to actually remove it, because I'd left it too long. So I see God in those. So what are some things that you see God, and what makes you worship Him? Like, what happens to make you worship God? That's what we're gonna say. Laura saying hi. James, share that too, saying hi from YouTube. So just think about that. If you have a comment, throw it out there. What makes you worship God? What makes you stop and pause and worship God? So, in the verse today, pull it up here. Matthew 15. Oh, my Bible's over here. Sorry. Matthew chapter 15 is where we're at this morning. And this is what Jesus is saying here. I'm sorry. Yep, Jesus is talking. And he says, this is what Isaiah said in verse 7. He said, "You hypocrites. Well did Isaiah prophesy of you when he said, 'This people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrine the commandments of men.'" In vain do they worship me. Here's the challenge that I was with this morning. That we should not be worshiping in vain. Let me put it this way. If this is the way the devotion for me hit, and it made me kind of think through this. The totality of our Christian lives, the entire attitude that we have, must be towards the worship of God. There should be things all the time pushing us and directing us and instructing us to worship God. So these things that I talked about, what makes you worship God? Is it music? Is it an activity? Is it something you do? Is it something you see? What makes you worship God? Whatever that is should be a part of our lives. Like, it should be a part of our day-to-day thing. Like, we should try to do that. So for me, right, it's getting out in nature, seeing this thing. So I need to make sure that at some point throughout the day, I'm going out and getting out in that nature and allowing God to hit me. So the entire attitude of a person must be towards worship God. If you do not know the presence of God in your office, your factory, your home, so if God is not, if the worship, right, if you do not worship God in all of those areas, your workplace, your home, your office, whatever you're doing, this is the statement it made, then God is not in the church you attend either. Now think about this for a second. And again, this hit me a little bit. If we are not willing to worship God, if we are not worshiping God, if we do not have things that are making us worship God on a day-to-day basis, the worship that we give on Sunday isn't true. Because if it was true, then we would have worship throughout the days. If the worship we give God on Sunday, singing the songs, right? All of the songs. It is well with my soul. Whatever the songs you're singing, that was the one that popped in my head first. The other one, I have decided to follow Jesus. No one go with me. But how many of us, when no one's with us, are we following Jesus? If we're not willing to do it throughout the week in our day-to-day lives, then what we do on Sunday isn't true. That's the truth that we're trying to look at this morning. That's the challenge that I want to see from this morning. When we look at a verse in Matthew 15 where Jesus is saying, in vain you worship me. You're hypocrites. Because you're not worshiping me throughout the week. So therefore this thing that you're doing when you come to the synagogue, it's not worship. What he would say to us is, if you're not able to worship and honor God throughout the week, you're not worshiping and honoring God on Sunday morning. Now, does this mean, again, I've said this before, does this mean that we can't mess up throughout the week? No. We're not talking about being perfect. But if there's not a mentality or a desire to worship God and to honor God throughout the week, like, you can't just turn it on for Sundays. God is not just the God of the weekend. He's a whole week God. And if we love him, I mean, we've said this before, or I've said this before to people. I'm married. If the only time I showed attention and care to my wife was on Sundays, I think we would have a problem Monday through Saturday. I think there would be an issue if the only time I showed her any care, concern, or thought was on Sunday. I don't think she would think that I really love her. I think she would think that she would, something I paid attention to on a certain day. But she would not call that love. She would not call that honoring or any of that type of thing. We can't do that with God either. And I think sometimes what we do, I think part of it is that we don't allow things to get into our lives that make us worship him, that remind us of the worship. I think there's a huge importance when the Israelites would make all of these altars and these memorials, because it would remind them of what God's doing. So it would help them worship. It would help them honor God. It would help them, push their minds back to him. But we don't do that a lot, right? We don't build altars. We don't build memorials. We don't build those types of things. And so I think a lot of times we are going through our weeks and we're just working through our week and we're just forgetting God. And then we come on Sunday and we're like, hey, I love God. I want to worship him and I want to serve him. And he's like, but where were you Monday through Saturday? And where were you, a lot of times, and even sadly, where were you last night? Like, What were you doing? Or what were you doing throughout the day? How did you treat your wife? How did you treat your husband? How did you treat your kids? How did you treat your employer? Did you go to work and steal and profane and do things incorrectly? Or did you use your workplace as an opportunity to still worship me? Or did you go to work and everyone still knew that you belonged to me? It would be like, myself going to a workplace, when I worked for the government and like having a second life there at workplace, right? Like maybe even having like a girl I talk to and, a whole different style of life, maybe I wear different clothes even, all this other concept, and I do that at work, but then I come home and I'm completely different. Like that doesn't work, right? You, People at work should still know I'm married at home, and yeah, I'm working with females and I'm doing stuff, but my love, my life, my wife is back home. It should be like that. It should be that your kids and the people around you see Jesus through you, not have to push you aside to hopefully get a glimpse of him. And so I think sometimes we need to be reminded when we see these verses and these challenges. I mean, Jesus was a little harsh sometimes to Christians. Not Christians, let me take that back. Jesus was harsh to people that called themselves Christians or would call themselves religious. They didn't call themselves Christians, but they would call themselves religious. And he'd say, no, you're following religion. You're putting religion above this. And again, I'm not trying to go into religion, but they weren't Christians back then. But he was saying, you're not following God. You need to be following God, and God is not what you're doing. And it goes not just what you look like on when you're in the synagogue or when you're at church or when you're here. That's not what it looks like. It means throughout the days, throughout the evenings, when you're at home and you're having those discussions with your wife and you're treating her properly, or your husband, or again, just your family, and or just your coworkers or your bosses, and how you're doing those. Like, you need to be able to honor me in all of those things. And if you don't, then the honor that you give me on Sunday it's vain. It doesn't mean anything. It's worthless. Again, go back to the example. My wife wouldn't care what I did for her on Sunday if Monday through Saturday I just didn't care about her. And so I think we need to be careful. Matthew 15 says this. Now, granted, here's the encouragement that I would say here is that it is exciting that God even cares. Like, so part of my thing with Anna is like, I have to admit that like I'm lucky that she's there, right? There's this beautiful thing. But if I push that a little bit further and to talk about God, like how I can worship God and how I can love and honor God, he should not be there for me. He should not care. I'm not worth anything. There's nothing I have to offer him. I have nothing. Yeah, I'm a measly human that messes up on a regular. A creation, a creature that was created and fail a lot, constantly making mistakes. But God still loves me, and God still cares for me. God still wants me. Like, every day I come home and the door's still open, and God's like, hey, come on in. I love you. What's up? How's it going? Like, that should make you worship him. That should make you want to love him more. There's an encouragement there that he doesn't base his love for us on our love for him. So yes, while we want to continually work on it, we want to continue to grow, and I do, you should want to continue to grow. The encouragement there is that God's love doesn't change, and he still loves us no matter what. So even if you feel like, man, you're hitting hard, and I feel this, and I'm struggling with this, and I'm not honoring God, and I'm not doing this and that, I don't want you to feel down. I want you to be encouraged that God's saying, hey, come on back then. Let's go. Let's start this again. Let's do this again. I'm right here. Let's start. And so that's the encouragement aspect of that. So hopefully that's encouraging to you. It was to me to be reminded of what God is doing for us and everything else. So I asked what makes you worship God? Oh, by the way, Margot Stevens, good morning to you. Say hi to you. So, and I asked just what makes you worship God? What makes you think of Him? And so Judy says that seeing the wonderful world that God has created, and I agree 100%. Renee, when the grandchildren start quoting Bible verses or they pray, they tell me something about Jesus. I love that, right? I mean, I don't have grandchildren, uh, but it is cool when I see my kids doing that and I see those aspects. And even if it's not my kids, I see other kids doing that. I see the kids here at church, or I see different aspects of teenagers growing up and becoming, adults that honor and worship and serve God. So I agree. It's a great way to worship God. So here's, again, quick challenge, and I'll recap, but let's worship God not just Sunday, but Monday through Saturday, and then on Sunday. Let's worship Him all week. It's Friday night, it's Saturday. Let's make sure that we're not forgetting to worship God this weekend. And so when we come on Sunday, we've already been worshiping, and this is just a culmination of the worship that we've been doing all week. And I think that we would be a lot better for it. So, and then again, the encouragement is don't fret, don't fear, don't panic if you feel like maybe you're not doing what you should be doing in some areas, or you feel like there's some areas you want to improve on. There should be, but just know God loves you and God cares for you, and He's there to help you, and He's not going to leave us. He's not going to forsake us, and He's going to give us opportunities after opportunities. So that's a great encouragement there. So I love you guys so much. I will see you Sunday at 11. And if not, I will see you back here Monday at 10 o'clock. Bye, guys.